Did that make me crazy? Crazy. Possibly. Oh. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Modern Matrimony, where we discuss finances and other taboo topics in order to help you and your significant other build and maintain generational wealth. Because, believe it or not, one of the biggest detriments to your net worth is divorce. Recent studies show that people can lose up to 70% of their assets and income due to divorce. Not just the half, like Eddie Murphy talked about. You can lose up to 70%. And who really wants to go through that if you don't have to? And so we want to make a safe space for you all to have these conversations and hopefully get some information to help you all to better your personal situations. Before we get started, just a couple of rules of housekeeping. The first thing is everyone is welcome here. I know that the title is Modern Matrimony, which is more aligned with marriage. But if you're someone who wants to be in a relationship, wants to improve a relationship, wants to save a relationship, you're welcome here. So single, separated, divorced, in a relationship, on a roster, you got your little situationship, whatever it is, we want you to come here, we want you to get better and take that information and improve your personal situation for sure. And the second thing is we want you to be interactive. This is not a webinar. This is not your typical podcast. We want you all to come share your comments, share your questions, maybe meet someone in chat, and just have a good time. And like I said earlier, just use that information to better your personal life. And today we're going to go over a topic that is really important, especially with today's climate. And I'm happy to share a resource who has done a lot of great things for me and my wife as far as having discussions, being a sounding board for us. We consider her a friend, has been really great for us as we've built not just our individual careers, but also have improved as people and our communication skills. And I couldn't have thought of a better person to bring on today. And so I don't want to steal her thunder, so I will leave it at that. But without any further ado, I want to go ahead and bring on Dr. Jasmine. She'll be here in a second, don't worry. There you are.
Hi. Hello.
How,
Good
good
evening.
evening. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I couldn't complain if I wanted to. You'd
Well,
probably get on me for that.
absolutely. And before we get started, I am rehabbing from COVID. So if I have to pause my mic at any time or anything like that, I don't want to blow you all away with a hacking cough. So I will just, you know, mute myself really quickly or say, excuse me, but I think I'll be okay.
I think so too. Well, I think this is a very good time for us to have this discussion because people are hurting. And a lot of times they don't really know how to express that and it comes out in ways that they don't intend. And so I just want us to be a resource for them to have a sounding board, maybe ask some questions. As a matter of fact, if you're in chat, if you haven't been feeling like yourself lately, or if you've ever went through a time of, or a period of time rather, where you just didn't feel like you were at 100%, go ahead and give us a wave, raise a hand, let us know you're here. And Dr. Tootie, one of the things I just want to ask you, because a lot of times when people think about mental illness, they go straight to, oh, I'm crazy or I ain't crazy. What do you define mental, like, what's your definition of mental illness?
Okay, so my definition of mental illness is really um, not a popular one. Let me just say that. My definition of
Okay.
mental illness is knowing that you have things you need to work on and not working on them.
Okay.
That's mentally ill to me, being comfortable with the status quo and just avoiding your issues. So that's my operating definition of mental illness. Other than that, I think we are mentally disordered or
Mm,
mentally diseased. So
mm,
not diseased or disordered or diseased.
okay.
Um, and so we know we have, anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, all of those mental health diagnoses that
Mhm.
equal mental illness or mental disease. Um, but mental illness would indicate if it's an illness, it's something that can be fixed or cured, and that's not always the case.
Mhm.
So I like to stick with the idea of being diseased as in out of ease or disordered as in out of order, so that we understand it to be more of a work in progress and something that we learn to cope with as opposed to something that's just one and done. Because I've been doing this for about 26 years and I have not seen a full cure. of a mental health disorder. It's just life, and life happens to all of us. We have different levels and different capacities to adjust to our circumstances.
Mhm.
Throw that in with a little bit of genetics, and then you get this whole book of definitions that pinpoint what's wrong with people when really it's just out being out of equilibrium.
Hmm. So if I'm hearing that correctly, nobody's perfect. And
Oh, absolutely not. No,
okay. And so something as normal as stress can be considered mental illness. Something as
absolutely.
common as grief.
Absolutely, because it's what happens as a result of those things. So yeah, there are some biochemical components. There are some genetic components. But you can take the same person and put them, you can take different people and put them in the same life circumstance, and the way they adjust and accommodate is completely different. It's according to the makeup of the person, the support structure that they have. And really the biggest catalyst I see is personality.
Hmm.
We don't do a lot to assess for personality. That's a whole big chunk of what's called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Manual for Mental Health,
Okay.
that really just gets overlooked because the idea is that you can't change your personality. But that's really the biggest influence on how anybody deals with any variety of issues is their personality. So you can have depression, but if you have a neurotic or pessimistic personality, your depression is going to be way more difficult to deal with than someone that's an optimist.
Hmm. Okay. And it's interesting that you say that. So in my line of work, which is similar but very different from yours, we have monetary personalities. So you
Yes.
have people who usually cope through how they spend their money or how they save it or how they view it. In your line of work, do you ever see that where someone's personality or whatever stress or grief that they're dealing with, where it comes out through their pockets?
Oh, absolutely. So, for example, let's think of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity
Hmm.
disorder. One, it's not disorder, it's an actual brain difference, right? It's a nomadic brain as opposed to an industrialized brain.
Okay.
People with ADHD are notoriously bad with money, notoriously bad with money because they live inside out. So, internally focused first. And it's not that they don't pay attention to anything, they just can't filter and they pay attention to everything all at once. So it's almost like those flipogram cartoons where you flip really
Mm-hmm.
fast and it looks like the picture's just moving and moving. That's the, yes, exactly. Till a point it just looks fluid. That's the way an ADHD person's brain is. And so with that, it's hard to attenuate to certain things, such as paying your bills on time, because you think, oh, I'll do it later. And then you later never comes. Or literally being paralyzed, knowing you need to do something, but you just can't muster up the get up and go to just click the button on your phone to pay the bill. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no real resistance. It's just how the brain functions. And so, like we say, ADHD is a very expensive disorder to have because you need 3 or 4 of everything, and you're gonna miss some deadlines. So if you have an ADHD partner, I have a lot of couples that come with problems with their spouses. And one of the first things we do is we assess them for ADHD because once we find that, it changes the course of their treatment. We're not going to just say they're just bad and reckless and irresponsible. That's not true. There's a brain mechanism that's interrupted from them that needs to be addressed before they can be on the right path to correct it. Same thing with bipolar disorder. If someone is manic, they're going to have a shopping spree a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times. That's one of the ways that mania presents themselves. And so it can feel like a bit of financial infidelity, but really it's a manifestation of the person's mental health issue that's coming out through their pockets.
Hmm. Now, you used a term there that stood out, financial infidelity. So I
Yes,
want to dig a little bit deeper into
of
that. So
course.
my first question is, do are people aware that they have mental illness when they're in relationships?
I would say the majority of people that come to me are not aware that they have a mental health issue. It's usually I'm under some kind of stress, or I've been told that I have a hard time getting along with other people, or I've never been able to maintain friendships. it's described in terms of their life functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And then we take our handy dandy book and we look at all of the symptoms and we go, ah, what you're actually describing is this. And then it's the whole, whoa, let that settle. Now you're telling me something's wrong with me? Something's wrong with my brain. It's not that I just need to learn how to communicate, because everyone always goes to therapy for communication. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that I need to know how to communicate. No, you have a real fundamental issue that's happening with you that needs to be addressed with some cognitive restructuring and or medication for some people before they can really come to a place of being comfortable in their lives. So most people don't know, and a lot of clinicians do not tell people what their mental health diagnosis is. So I'm gonna let you know, anybody listening, if you are going to a therapist and they're using your insurance, you have a mental health diagnosis. It is required because we are in the medical model.
Hmm. So wait, so you keep dropping gems. I keep intending to go back, but you dropped something new. So what you're saying is that
Me.
everyone who goes to therapy consistently, whether they know it or not, on paper somewhere, they're listed as having some type of mental health issue.
If they utilize their insurance. So if you are in private pay,
Mm-hmm.
therapists are not obligated to give you a mental health diagnosis. If you utilize your insurance benefits, we have to give you something because we have to go in front of a utilization board and say, why is this person receiving services? It is based in the medical model. So this is an issue. Therapy is going to cure you. So we have to say what that is and we have to justify why we're using it. Now, there are some benign diagnoses that
Mm-hmm.
are appropriate, such as adjustment. Um, but oftentimes people do not know what is stated on paper. It's a bunch of numbers. So if you looked at your billing, you wouldn't even know what it means. Um, and so it's important to ask, and your therapist should be really comfortable telling you.
Oh, good to know.
Hmm. That
So,
goes for couples counseling too, by the way.
oh, definitely good to know.
Yes.
So, what's the diagnosis for retail therapy?
Okay, so the diagnosis for retail therapy tends to be depression,
Hmm.
anxiety, ADHD, or bipolar 2 disorder. So, bipolar 2 disorder is where you have some mania or erratic behavior, but it's not to the point where it's going to cause you to lose something very important in your life. Like, you're not going to lose your relationship, you're not going to necessarily lose your job, you're not going to end up in a hospital
Mm-hmm.
as a result of it, but it's just enough to cause a disruption. So that's usually when I see the retail therapy. It's that. It's one of
Got it.
those.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, we got retail therapy,
Mhm.
and then we have financial infidelity.
Yes. So
Go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say financial infidelity. I hear, well, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, it is just as detrimental to relationships as physical infidelity.
You don't
I
say.
am not
Wait,
kidding.
wait. So relationships are ending because one person spends too much money, and then the other person doesn't talk about the money. You
Yes.
don't say.
It can be spent Financial infidelity could be spending too much money.
Mm-hmm.
It can be withholding all the money and using it as a power play over the partner. Um, it can also be purchasing and hiding
Okay.
things. And so it's anything where I trust you with providing stability in our relationship. So I trust you with assuring that we have monetary stability,
Mm-hmm.
and you do something to undermine that financial instability in secret. That's what financial infidelity is.
Okay. So what about capping slash finessing? So if there's somebody who acts like they got money and they don't, what is that considered?
That's just called being hoodwinked.
Okay.
You're just not being honest. But it can set up a dynamic where someone is giving more because they believe that you need it and you really don't need it. You're hoarding the funds to yourself, or you're just presenting as if you're more on top of your finances than you really are.
Mm.
Um, that's just flat out lying, basically. Is it infidelity? It's infidelity to the point that the other person's stability is wrapped up in it. So if I need to feel secure and you're lying to me so that I feel secure, that makes the infidelity piece of it.
Hmm. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Is there a way for a couple to make it back from financial
Oh,
infidelity?
absolutely, absolutely. So it's getting to the core of the issue. Well, why is it happening? A lot of times, money holds a power and control dynamic over the relationship.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna play into gender biases, but in my experience, I have seen that women are tend to be more dominated financially, regardless if they make more or less. So even
Wait,
if they make more, yes.
let's stick a pin in that. So,
Okay.
because I mean that's important because right now we live in the dynamic. If you're on social media a lot, there's a lot of male versus female, and a lot of times the women are doing well, and they don't necessarily get along with a certain group of gentlemen. How are people being coerced or limited if they're making more money?
Um, just one of the ways is if women are making more money, and again, I can only speak to my bias of what I see,
Mhm.
is that what's yours is ours.
Hmm.
If men make more money, it's what's mine can be ours if I think you deserve it or if I'm in agreement with how you spend it.
Okay.
And I think because women are more conditioned to release the control, because
Hmm.
especially of African American women, if you're in an African American Black love relationship, we're either going to be hard if we're not soft. There is not a lot of in between. And so a lot of times we give over our finances or we take on the financial leadership role in the household because we want that Black love experience. We want that relationship, and it's times it's hard out there. And so it's like, yes, I work hard, I have all this, but I'm going to make sure that my man knows that they're the king. I'm going to make sure that my man, feels supported and taken care of. And I'm not going to ask for too much.
Hmm.
I'm just going to give and I'm going to give and I'm going to give.
And what's the result with this whole buying love experiment that you see?
I see the result of just kind of feeling empty and taken advantage of by the end of it.
Hmm.
And in the couples that I tend to see this happen, a lot of times the women are more educated and have higher paying jobs because I think again that's another societal structure that we live in as African American people.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, African American men, African American women, are what is it, a 6-to-1 ratio right now to African American men in terms of higher education?
I've been locked down
This,
for a while now. I don't know. I don't know what the
I
stats
had to
are.
keep up on these things. I go to think tanks and all that stuff. So it used to be 9-to-1. We're doing a little bit better, I think. Um, and so I could count on one hand the amount of couples that I have currently, where the women have had more opportunity or have made bigger gains in their educational life, which falls over into their professional lives. And their men, for whatever reason, have either not progressed past high school or they're in, what they would call blue collar jobs, which I think are fantastic. Not enough people do blue collar work. But they don't make as much financially. And I see the women really walking that tightrope
Mm.
of not wanting to say, hey, you should be able to do this, that, and the third for me because you're a man. But then the men actually demanding more and to say, well, it's ours, right? It's not just yours, it's ours. And so because it's ours, it should matter to you that you pay the mortgage and the car insurance and everything for the kids. And after I'm done with, my little, uh, habits, I'll give you what's left over, because you still want a life. You still want to feel like an independent man. But African American people are just not set up for that family dynamic in this country. We're just not.
Mm.
We haven't since the time of, if they come and they see shoes under your bed, you lose all of your benefits, right? So
Oh, you're talking about welfare?
I'm talking about just welfare, but how that continues to just um, continues to just grow and replicate itself in other ways. So now it's no longer about welfare, and you lose your benefits if they see a man's shoes in your home.
Mm-hmm.
But we are aware that we have to be mindful of the challenges of our African American men and really work hard to preserve their sense of self, their identities,
Mm.
their egos.
I'm glad that's exactly where I was going. So there's a lot of divide in our particular community
Oh,
when
yes.
it comes to finances, resources, and
Yes.
education, and it's almost like they're pit against each other at
Yes.
times. And if we're going to focus on our community, we were addressing the plight of the woman in our community.
Yes.
For the male that feels that he has to be all things at all times, what are
Mm-hmm.
some things that you see him suffer through in a relationship, and what are some tips that you would give him as well?
Well, I see him really suffering with one emasculation, right?
Mm,
And having to be something that they've never seen demonstrated.
mm,
So having to, be the head of the household and make the financial decisions and allow a soft place to land for their women.
mhm,
Um, but you can't take your wife and your family out for a night and go to dinner and a movie because you just can't afford it. So who has to pull out the credit card or the debit card? She does.
mm,
What does that do to the self-esteem of her partner?
mm. Let's ask the chat what they think that does to the self-esteem of a partner.
Absolutely.
So let's repeat that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to take your family out.
Yes.
Mentally, you think that it's a great idea. You know that you need it. You've been stressed out, but you can't afford it, and your partner has to do it. Chat, what do you all think that does to a person's self-esteem?
Yes. Mm-hmm. In date nights, women, we want things. The
Oh, I know.
challenge is,
Oh, I know. Especially
we
pretty
want,
women, they're expensive.
right.
Ooh.
Like you want relationships. You don't really need them in the same way that we used to. We don't rely on that for our stability.
Mhm,
And so it's like, okay, well, what are you bringing to the table aside from a a a, a person, another being who's there? What's in it for me? And so I think if couples really talk about these dynamics, it really helps both parties to understand the views of one another. And once you communicate about it, that's the first step, right? Is to just bring it out into the open and understand what's running behind. What are the programs and the processes behind the scenes that we're operating out of?
mm. So we have a question in the chat where they said that they think that it lowers a person's self-esteem. And I want to ask you to give them specific tips on this.
Mm-hmm.
What is a way for a woman to start a sentence with her partner if they have this dynamic? And what is a way for a man to start the conversation for his partner in this dynamic?
I would always say if you start off with validating the other person's experience, even if you're not sure what it is, make an educated guess.
Mm,
Say, honey, I understand that it might be really challenging to let me know that you only have $25 to last you for the rest of the week when I'm saying that, I want to go out to dinner and a movie or to go see this concert.
mm,
I know that must be really challenging for you, but I'm asking you to let me know because unless you do, I'm only have my own experiences to go off of.
mm,
And he can say the same to her, like, well, I understand that you have more opportunity than me and that you have this job that's going to afford you certain things. But it makes me feel ineffective sometimes as your partner when I can't do these things for you.
mm,
And then that way she can let him know, well, besides the finances, this is where your value is. It's not in what you make, because clearly I can make it myself. but
Mm,
it's the other things you bring to the table. It's your caretaking of me if I am able to get this job that's going to require more of me because I am a woman of color.
mm,
What are the things that you can do for me behind the scenes that are not emasculating at all, but it takes a great deal of strength to draw me a bath or to sit down with the kids and do the homework or to say, hey, I tossed an extra load of laundry in for you because I know you had a late night meeting.
mm. You talking
So
about chore play?
chore, yes, chore play.
A little bit
I
of
like
chore
that.
play.
I was still at Delante chore play. Yeah, or just conversation, or just say, "Wow, okay, take off your boss lady hat. You don't have to be that here. You can trust me. I'm not trying to dominate you. Just relax. I got you."
Okay, cool, cool. So also want to have some tips for, we're being fair across the
Of
board. So we're going to do something for
course.
men. We're going to do some for women. We're going to do something for the alternative
Yes.
people as well. So from a male's perspective, a lot of times, as you know, with men, we struggle with feeling like we have somewhere that we can be vulnerable.
Yes.
What's a way for a man that has great intentions, that's going through stress, that may not have people that he can trust or whatever have you? What's a good way for him to have a very similar conversation where he can find that safe space, or if he wants to just kind of figure out how to have that dynamic with his partner?
I think what men need is a safe space, honestly, among other men. I think men have, especially in our community, have a lot of strong women in their lives. They do not have a lot of strong men in their lives. And unfortunately, men are not able to share the same level of intimacy openly that women can with their friends and their sisters and their aunties. And so, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now, why is that from your perspective?
It's well, it's just acculturation. It's how we're socialized across the board. Not even within the African American community, we are in a predominantly patriarchal, um, male machismo kind of expectation in our society. And if you are soft or vulnerable, you're seen as weak. We're just now getting to the point where men can shed a tear in public, and it's like, oh wow, he's so sensitive. No, he's just human. He is so sensitive, but it's so sensitive because it's never been permitted before. And so we have been trained for safety to keep all of our issues and challenges close to the
Mhm.
chest, and we have to open up. We are far behind other ethnic groups in terms of letting the community really be the community and saying, hey brother, I need to be heard. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the show The Shy, but we out here, I hope we are. I love that show, and one of the most powerful things in that show was the men's support group,
Mm.
where all the brothers just came together and just say, hey, I'm hurting, or this is really impacting me. Because if you can have that vulnerable space with one another, then you'll know how to have that space with your partner. Whoever taught anyone that not only it's okay, but how to do it, that it's safe to do it.
Mm.
And so I think key to opening up to your loved one or to your woman is to have a bruh or someone you can go to that you can keep it real with one another. You can whoop de whoop and say it any kind of way you need to say it, so that when you come home to your woman, you can say, hey, I'm going to lay this on you. I don't need you to judge me. I don't need you to criticize me. I just want to really hear. I want you to hear me.
Got it. So basically having a sounding board to make the message more
Yes.
concise so that it's received better at home. And you made a good point about the shy with their help group that they have for
Yes.
each other. Brothers can get together and do the same thing with an investment group. You
Yes.
have an idea. One person has the idea. One person has the time. One person has the capital.
Yes.
I was on the phone on my way over here. I won't name any names. Someone reached out to me asking about some ideas about purchasing a business, and I was honored that that person reached out to me because that's a sign of trust.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of times we as men, we sometimes see each other as competitors, or especially within our community, trust is not a big
Mm-hmm.
thing. So what I'm hearing from you, and I'm just bouncing it back to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly and the
Mm-hmm.
audience hearing it
Mm-hmm.
correctly, is the same trust that can build a friendship or a vulnerability can also be used in business and building that with each other to empower both of your families. Do we have that correct?
Absolutely,
Great.
absolutely, and we have to really expect that we're gonna get our feelings hurt sometimes.
Hmm.
People are gonna disappoint us. People may steal our ideas. Just don't give them control over your money too much until you know for a fact who they are. Just a little bit at a time. When you're doing something online and they say we're gonna make a little deposit in your bank just to make sure it's really you.
Hmm.
Do that with people when you're trusting them with things that are going to impact your stability. But other than that, you are going to have to take a risk because you do not grow without taking a risk. You just don't.
Hmm. That's a good point. Um, you mentioned control a second ago,
Yes.
and I usually try to keep this thing here NC-17, but we're talking about mental health, and a lot of people are hurting right now. So
Yeah.
I'm going to just go ahead and introduce it. Hopefully, I don't get canceled or whatever have you. I
And these
will.
days and times, probably not.
I'll remain bipartisan. That's part of my business here. But a lot of people are hurting and don't feel that they know how to express themselves. They don't feel heard. Um, they just don't feel validated with a national decision that was made last week.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's happening in your business as it is in mine. This is dividing families, not just communities, not just friendships. There are people who live together who see the world completely different. One person's making a financial decision, the other person is making it from a humanitarian
Hmm.
position. What do you feel are some ways? Well, first off, what have you seen on your end? Second part is, what are some ways that people can mend that divide over this political stance that we're all living in right about now?
Well, what I see um, is one thing that really surprised me. Um, is I have clients from all different ethnicities and walks of life, and my clients that I would have expected to go one way actually went a different way for very different, very interesting reasons. And so my African American and Latino American Republican supporters really wanted to have that strong male dominant figure, and that's what appealed to them. And my other constituents who I expected to go, who you would think by looking at them would go one way, they really wanted the more nurturing, inclusive, I'm going to hear you, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to meet your need approach of the other candidate. So it was very interesting to see that. Some of those were in the same household too. But one thing that I noticed was those who voted on the basis of economics and thinking long-term planning. And we know that inheritances are protected if you're a business owner. You certain tax breaks and things like that were very appealing for one side of the aisle.
I
Yes.
just got to
Uh-huh.
ask you, because this comes up in every time we talk about like estate taxes or anything
Uh-huh.
like that. Are these clients going to be affected by changes in the estate tax, or is it the narrative?
I have a couple that will.
Okay.
They are inheritors and have children inheritors of large sums.
Okay.
But the majority no. They think that they will. They're listening to the narrative, and the narrative sounds good. They may have a minimal benefit, but in the long term, is it going to be that much to impact them? I doubt it. I think what's going to be more impactful is the fact that they all have daughters, and they all have parents or people in their lives with pre-existing health conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so where one member of the household voted along those lines, and the other one voted for, again, the financial stability or security,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't take into effect, is the financial stability or security going to matter if you have cancer, which is a pre-existing condition, and under that your premium is going to triple because you already have a pre-existing condition, right? So it's not looking at the broader picture. What I had some of my families do is this: okay, write out all of the benefits of this person, all the benefits of that person, turn off the news, go in and research and really see where the policies stand, and then see what's going to work best for your family overall. And the ones
Okay.
that actually took the time to do that fared better than the ones that just wanted to be right.
Oh, so there are some people who still have not come together after voting
Oh, they're
differently
not
within
even
the same household.
spending holidays together.
What?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Mm-mm.
So from your perspective, and whenever we're planning for someone's future, obviously we want to be optimistic. We want to plan
Yes.
for the best, prepare for the
Yes.
worst. Do you feel like some of these relationships can still be saved?
I think people can do whatever they want. It just depends on what are they willing to sacrifice in order to do it.
Mhm.
And if some of that sacrifice is going to be sacrificing their fundamental morals, values, and ideals, that's going to be harder because those are core beliefs.
Mm.
And you can't just change your core beliefs because you love someone.
Mm.
You can try, but you're not, how effective are you going to be in the long term? And so um it's polarizing. A lot of people are just choosing just not to talk about it. Like it's done, what's done is done. We're just gonna wait and see what flushes out.
Sure.
And then others are like, wow, I really misjudged who you were. And I don't think that I can live the rest of my life with a person that has these viewpoints. And it's not for me to say, I just help them navigate those waters. Because as a marriage and family therapist, yes, I want people to preserve their relationships. But what's most important is that people can self actualize and not betray themselves in order to save their relationships.
All right. Got a comment in the chat. Oh, AK, what's going on, man? So he's in agreement with what you stated, and I have a question for you because we've talked about um, heterosexual relationships. We've talked about cisgender males and females, but a community that is probably going through it just as much, if anybody, if not more, right now, is the LGBTQ plus community.
Absolutely.
And while they might not be faring against each other within their relationships, there may be some economical downturns for them because of this decision.
Yes.
What are some ways that they can kind of build a safe space with one another? What are some conversations they can have to keep their minds elevated through whatever may be coming their way?
I would really just say remember that it's 4 years and to have faith in our country and the legislators to and believe in something, whatever you want to label it, believe in something, that there is a higher degree of intelligence out here that created this world we live in that can stop it from going off the rails if it's going to get to that point. Because for all the talk and all the rhetoric, we know that part of the benefit of a bipartisan government, even whoever controls what, is still a bipartisan government. There are going to be roadblocks and things aren't going to be as easy as people may feel that it's going to be to just reverse things or, reverse the ability to use your health insurance, for example, to get hormone replacement therapy or, gender reassignment surgery or whatever the case may be. Um, I know our country is founded on a specific set of principles, but I personally, I believe in a God of love, and I can't ever assume to be able to speak on behalf of such greatness. And so I just, settle in, meditate, see where you lie, and surround yourself with like-minded people so you feel esteemed. But also keep your ear to the stone. Don't turn away. You have to know what the people who oppose you are thinking as well. I think a lot of times we want to just bury our head in the sand and say, I'm just not going to look at it anymore. But it's going to impact you. I have several families that I know are really going to be impacted by some of the policies that are being presented in terms of, um, transgender rights, same-sex rights, the reproductive health rights, which are really going to impact the LGBTQA community, believe it or not, because a lot of people still utilize their parts to have families, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so we just have to remember that it will take a lot for 4 years to take us back, to the 30s or to the 50s, as which, it's part of the narrative.
Mhm.
Like, oh no, now we're just going back to the 1940s. It's going to take a little while, more than 4 years, to absolutely get us there. But you have to know what everybody else is saying, the people on your side and the people on the other side of the aisle, too.
That is a wonderful point, and one of the conversations that I've been having with a lot of people, which is not always popular until I show them the numbers, is
Yes.
regardless of how you may feel about who's in office, pay attention to the market, invest.
Oh, yeah.
If we go through inflation, regardless of what your preferences are, regardless of what your political views are, inflation don't give a damn. Excuse my
That,
French.
that part.
So I would strongly advise, as you're working through these emotions, put some money in the market,
Yes.
because if certain things do happen, like you said, all promises are not made. I mean, all promises are not carried through by most presidents. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But if certain ones are carried through, and this has nothing to do with some of the more personal things that people voted upon, this is economics.
Yep.
If certain things go through, we're going to see inflation like we've never seen before. Put
Oh,
some money in the
yes.
market.
Yes.
So,
Put some money in. Yes. And find your allies. From the beginning of
mm,
time, you know, marginalized people have found allies, people across the aisle who,
mhm.
were incognito or whatever else, to do their bidding for the things that they couldn't do for themselves. We may have
you
to go back to some
you
of
mean
that.
going
Yes,
undercover?
sir.
Oh, well, hey, whatever we got to do to win, right?
Whatever you
Uh,
got to do to win. I was happy to
Good point.
look at my Bitcoin. I don't know about you.
Right. That's bipartisan. Bitcoin. Well, I'm not giving away free investment advice. If you have questions, reach out to
But
one
I
of us
need
later.
it
But
because for that reason, I'm looking at, okay, what's going to happen to disability? I have a child who is going to need disability. She has a chronic mental health issue that she will need long term care at some point. And the way it's looking, the system is going to be depleted.
hmm
So I have to find other ways to use what is going to be working to my favor to secure that bag for her, because social services might not be able to do it.
So what I hear you saying is basically you're going to play the game to win so that you can self-insure, because they don't ask your political affiliation on an insurance contract, do they?
They sure do not.
All right. Now, you talked about winning and, playing behind enemy lines. And while that's all fine and dandy, and we hope that people are able to still succeed regardless of who's in office, regardless of what's going on in their relationships, the fact of the matter, and you and I see it more often than not, well, not, let me not say it more often than not. We see it more often than people care to discuss,
Yeah.
rather. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes
Oh.
people give it their all and it just does not work out. And a lot of times you see people coping with it in different ways. Some people will talk about it freely, some people will just disappear, some people will play like they're okay, some people find a
Mm-hmm.
substance, some people find other people to just spend their time with.
Mm-hmm.
When you are seeing people go through this soul crushing experience of divorce
Mm-hmm.
or breakups or separations, and I'll talk about the monetary
Yeah.
aspect, but what are some things that they can do to help themselves find that light at the end of the tunnel?
Now I'm going to say this. No one gets married for the point of being divorced one day. I really think divorce is something people need to talk about either premaritally or during the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time where you're deciding to go through it, guess what? You got there for a reason. So who is most times divorce is adversarial in nature. No one is really there. As much as they say, and I have heard it, I've been doing this for so long. I never want to see them struggle. I'm always gonna love them. I'm gonna do whatever I have to do. Thank you. Bull crap. No, you're not. You're gonna want to break that person's back if they are breaking your heart. Period. And so the idea is it's actually a way to divorce proof or to support your marriage by talking about who do we want to be if this doesn't work out? How am I going to make sure the choices that we make while we are married will set us up to divorce and still be able to maintain a friendship or a cordial relationship for the sake of the family because we're not financially broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we determine what saving, is going to look like? Are we making sure that everybody's student loans get paid off? Are we making sure that everybody's car note gets paid off? Or is it okay, you do for me now and then we'll do for you later? Because what if you don't make it to later?
Mm-hmm.
And the fastest growing population of people in poverty are women who get divorced. They go
Wait,
from having a two income or a solid life to, okay, now what am I going to do?
so not everybody turns out like Jeff Bezos' wife?
Oh, no, we wish. No, even amongst high earning, I've had women who have been in marriages for 30 years where the husbands couldn't keep a job, and these women have worked successfully the whole time, and they had to give over half of their pensions
Mm-hmm.
and 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 pay spousal support. But we already know that women make 70 cents on the dollar.
So wait, so if they make 70 cents on the dollar and they lose somewhere between 50 to 70%, because most of the time people think it's just half, but really if you start looking at lawyer fees, lifestyle changes, there's an extra fee in there as well. So if they're only making 30% of 70%,
Mm-hmm.
that leaves us what, about 21% of where they
Yeah,
started?
yeah.
Oh.
How are they living?
So what are some ways for them to, and we want to do it for both.
Yes,
So
for
man,
both.
so
Absolutely.
what are some ways to start this conversation? Because I was going to mention, having a post up, just having that conversation saying, hey,
Yes.
but what are some ways to bring up that conversation if it's necessary without offending the partner and where there's still a chance for them to reconcile?
I think one of the bill sharing or financial responsibility strategies that I support
Mm,
when I'm working with my premarital and newlywed couples is the law of percentages, right? So we
mm,
go into this,
mhm.
we're going to split everything 50-50 down the middle. Um,
That don't work.
that's
That
not
don't work.
fair. I remember making $46,000 and my ex-husband, yes, ex, made $175,000, but we paid half of everything. How is that fair?
Depends on who you talk to.
Okay,
I'm not getting in. It depends on who you talk to.
exactly. I don't see how that's fair. But it's certainly it's equal, but it's not fair. So
Mm,
what I have learned
mm,
is that you take everything that you are responsible for and you lay it out on the table and say, for us to live, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars per month. Okay, so now let's take the percentages. 30% of my salary and 30% of your salary, let's add it together. Does it cover our expenses? No. Okay. How about 40% of my salary and 40% of your salary? Does it cover our expenses? No. Okay. 50%. You see where I'm going with it.
mm-hmm.
Until you hit the percentage that's going to cover your necessities and then allow you both to be able to save. Because if I'm paying half of everything with my 46,000 and you paying half of our bills with your 175,000, where's my retirement coming from?
You want me to answer that, or you want me to just leave that one alone?
I'm I'm just saying, like, where are you? I'm gonna go pick it off my money tree
No, I hear you.
and, and put it in the bank. And so you really have to have the conversation to say, okay, what's fair and what's equal because we both want to do well. I One of the most heartwarming stories that I ever had the pleasure of working with was a second relationship, and the woman didn't want to marry because she had debt. And she was like, I don't want to bring any burden to you.
Mm,
I still have my student loans. I'm still getting over my first relationship and reestablishing ourselves. And it takes about 10 years to reestablish yourself after divorce, people. 10 years. Um, and so I can't bring this to our new relationship. It wouldn't be fair to you. So he snooped, not a fan of snooping, but I am for this. He snooped and found all her stuff and he paid it off.
false activity, huh?
And with his ring, he said, here you go. Now you have no more excuses. Will you marry me? And he said, because if you're not winning, we're not winning.
Wait, that's not simping?
No, that's not That's manning. I'm sorry, that's big D energy. And I don't mean Delonte.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
That's big D. It's saying it's just money. I can make more money, but I can't make more you.
Mm,
And so if you're not sitting here under interest and the weight and the pressure, then you're free to trust me as your partner.
mm-hmm,
And I got this. So now we can build together.
mm-hmm.
Now we're on equal footing. You don't owe me anything.
That's a
But
good way to look at it.
that was rare. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've seen that one time. Another time is I saw someone that said, fine, we will live off of my salary for a year. Everything you make goes to pay off all the debt. When you're paid off, we live off of your salary for a year. Everything I make goes to pay off the debt.
Mm,
And I'm not saying they were comfortable, but in 3 years, guess what? They were growing together.
mm.
Could I have had that? 100%. But it takes a partner with a mindset to be able to have that.
Very true.
Yes.
So we'll wrap up soon. So
Mm-hmm.
before doing so, we appreciate the audience for being so interactive with your comments and your questions. If you all have additional questions, now's a great time to ask. Uh, as we're waiting for them to type it up, if they wanted to have a private conversation with you, what are some ways that they can get in touch with you?
Well, they can send me a message through Instagram on Aspire with Jazz. There's not a lot on my page right now. I'm working on that. I'm a work in progress. They can also email me at jasmine@aspirecccc.com. That's Aspire Counseling Consulting Creative Solutions .com, and just send me a message and we'll talk and see what type of support they need. And I'm happy to love what I do, and it's important that everybody has access. We gotta have access, um, and just get the conversation started.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I have a question. We have a
Okay.
comment. Somebody said that you're the best. I would agree. My question to you is, what do you feel is the most detrimental internal conversation that people have that ends a relationship earlier than it needs to?
The most detrimental conversation that people have that ends it. It's never going to change.
Can you
It's ne-
elaborate on that?
yeah. So once you're already defeated and feeling hopeless, and you say it's never going to change,
Hmm.
then you move into the realm of complacency. And then when you move into complacency, your discontent forms resentment, forms division, and whatever the insecurities or the fears are, you're creating a breeding ground for that to happen. And so you always have to say or think to yourself, there's still a possibility, because as long as you think there's still a possibility, you're going to keep the conversation going. And then you also have to know, okay, how long am I going to do this? How long am I going to talk to a brick wall waiting for it to talk back? I'm not saying that every relationship is salvageable.
Hmm.
And, you got to know when to cut your losses and to say, you're a great person. We're just not great together. We just see the world really, really differently. And I would have to change too much of who I am in order to make this work. And I'm not willing to do that. I like who I am. If you like who you are, you're not really likely to change it. And you're not going to really be successful at changing it for the long term, because you don't really want to begin with. So you got to be real with yourself and to say, I may be an a-hole, but I like who I am. I don't want to change who I am. And there's somebody out there that might just like me exactly how I
That's
am.
real.
And so, but, think about, why are you in relationship with someone else? Are you looking to fill a part of yourself that feels vacant? Or do you think you're so terrific and you can find another terrific person and come together and just really be rock stars? That's what we want. We don't want 50-50. I want 100-100.
That's real. We have a question from King Lock 11. How can one get their significant other to invest in planning when it comes to financial gain? That is a great question, sir. I will take that one. A lot of times it's creating the vision. Most of the time, when people don't invest, is because they don't believe or they don't understand the concept. So, therefore, they don't see how it works. And as human beings, we're distrusting. If it's your significant other, if they're a minority that is a part of a group that's been hurt by a financial institution, there's an extra level of distrust. So the first part is education so that you can build that enthusiasm. When people understand things, they get excited. When they figure out how they can take advantage of it and make it work in their favor, they get elated.
Mhm.
And then that's when you have that conversation and then maybe show them, because I know you personally, you're a man of means, you're a man of discipline. Maybe show some of the things that you've done in your investment history. Show some accounts. Say, hey, this is where I started. These are some of the things. Show your wins and your losses so that they know that you're human, that you're not just showing them something to make them feel good. And then say, hey, the next time I do this, do you want to kind of go through the process with me? And let them keep an eye on the investment. So that was something that my wife and I did when we very first met. My very first gift to my wife was a stock, and she thought I was crazy. I think she made some money off of it. She ain't took me out to eat with the money yet, but uh,
She's saving it.
yeah, saving it to take me out to eat. Uh, but in all sincerity, though, I think just having that conversation and then creating that experience together where it's not a lot of pressure, they know that you have their back, whether it's a win or a loss, that can go a long way.
Yes. Can I add something to that,
Of course,
Delonte?
you can.
All right. I want to say let's be curious about really what they are thinking and what their fears are. I think we make assumptions
Hmm.
and we start talking based on, I think they're thinking this, so I want to convince them.
Hmm.
And so we start laying it all out. All the proof is in the pudding. I'm gonna convince you. But really, before we can move somebody to the other side, we have to say, hey, what are you afraid of? What happened to you? Or what did you see? What did you experience that made you think it either wasn't that important or it was off of your radar? Help me understand your personal relationship with money, because then we can talk about our relationship as a couple with money. Because once you validate people's feelings and their thoughts, they feel heard, they feel seen, and then they're more likely to come along in alignment with you.
I love that. So
That's a
yes,
little
sir.
therapist secret right there for you.
No charge, no charge. All right, so we're coming up on time once again. I did get a text message, so if we can give a quick answer. Unfortunately, someone has recently experienced a divorce after being married for 23 years.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
yeah, and great person, and they're just trying to figure out how to kind of pick themselves back up and how to have these conversations. They came into some money. They don't want to be used or anything like that. What are some ways that they can approach this without being jaded, without having fear, where they can go into their next relationship in a healthy manner?
Um, so really just taking stock at what happened in your last relationship and not what the other person did. What was your role? Because there is always our own role, even if we feel like we were taken advantage of or the other person wasn't honest, whatever the case may be, there was something within us that allowed that to happen. Okay. And so we need to take stock of our own weaknesses and to say, okay, this is what I can do better for myself. This is who I need to evolve into so that I can be a healthier version, so I can see the red flags, so I can see the yellow. We don't even want to see the red flags. We want to see the yellow flags, right? And not look at the world through rose-colored glasses all of the time. Now we have to have some optimism, but really to say, okay, this is the part that I gave myself away in this last relationship, and I have to make this next person earn this part of
Mm,
me. So
mm,
how am I going to slow myself down so I can make sure they're the caliber of person that I need them to be?
mm. Okay, I like that. Put up some walls, make them climb over
That part, yes. See, I'm gonna come to
them.
you for all the little quick sayings. I need those.
Look, put me on the payroll at Aspire.
I can't afford you.
We, we'll talk about it. We'll
We'll
talk
talk
about
about it.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm very grateful for you. Very appreciative of you taking this time with us. If you all have any questions, suggestions, make sure you reach out to Jasmine
Yes,
directly.
please.
Uh, it has been a
Thank
pleasure,
you.
and we will see you all on the next session of Modern Matrimony.
Thank you for the opportunity. Be
Oh,
well,
my
everyone.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Bye bye now.
All right, bye bye.